I often wonder, as the world changes around me, whether I am living right in the middle of a revolution I haven't fully understood yet. A silent revolution, one without shouting, without flags, without clashing armies, yet one in which each of us slowly loses a role, a task or a place in the great mechanism that keeps society functioning. And this revolution has a clear protagonist, the robot, in all its forms, from industrial machines to artificial intelligence algorithms, to software assistants that learn, adapt, and become better and better. When I say robots, I don't only mean those metal arms that move with mathematical precision in a factory, or the androids from science fiction movies. I mean all automated systems, physical or digital, that can take over tasks traditionally performed by humans. And my feeling, one I describe honestly, without trying to soften it, is that they will continue to gain ground. Why? Because they are faster, more accurate, cheaper in the long run, and perhaps most importantly, they don't get tired, don't protest, don't ask for vacation, and don't feel threatened by change. In recent years, I've seen and felt this transformation firsthand. Each time I enter a supermarket and notice another self-checkout machine, I remember when the cashier was a person, not a scanner. When I place an order online and receive automated updates, I realize that the people who once answered the phone have been replaced by management systems. When I read an article partially written by an algorithm, the question that comes to mind is, what's next? That's why I believe robots will replace humans, and this belief doesn't come from a fatalistic fear, but from an honest analysis of the world I live in. Several reasons repeat themselves in my mind. First, efficiency. A robot can work without interruption. I, as a human, have limits. I get tired, I make mistakes, I get distracted. My emotions fluctuate. No matter how hard I try, I cannot reach the constant perfection an automated system offers in repetitive or extremely precise tasks. I felt this when I worked on a project where I was responsible for manual quality checks. Every time I approached the end of the day, my focus dropped. Once the process was automated, the program detected errors in milliseconds. For a moment, I felt useless, as if my existence in that role was no longer necessary. And, in a way, it wasn't. Second, predictability. Robots are not creatures of surprise. They do exactly what they're programmed to do. And in an economic world obsessed with control, exact costs, and measurable results, such predictability is pure gold. I, as a person, can be influenced by my emotional state, personal problems, or stress. Robots cannot. I've seen them in factories. They don't miss a beat. They don't leave early. They don't arrive late. In this comparison, humans inevitably lose. In addition, the adaptability of new technologies has always stunned me. At first, I believed only physical labor was at risk, that factory workers or cashiers were the ones with something to lose. But now, I see artificial intelligence entering fields once reserved for human thought. Writing, analysis, programming, design, even counseling or medical assistance. I felt uneasy when I saw an algorithm composing music or generating a text that sounded like it was written by a real person. It made me wonder how much of what I believe defines me as a human can be replicated by a machine. Another reason I believe robots will replace humans is economic for a company. Investing in a robot is expensive at first, but more advantageous in the long run. A machine doesn't ask for a salary, doesn't need insurance, doesn't need motivation, and doesn't get sick. I've often heard entrepreneurs talk about optimization. In reality, this word masks a powerful desire to reduce costs. And if we humans are expensive and unpredictable compared to machines, replacement becomes inevitable. And then there's a truth that may sound harsh. People themselves push this transformation forward. Robots are not forcing their way into our lives. We're opening the door. We want more convenience, more speed, non-stop services, lower prices. And to meet these demands, companies choose the most efficient solutions: automation. I myself use automated services because they are fast and convenient. And then I find myself reflecting on the contradiction between my comfort as a user and the consequences for the job market. However, although I believe robots will replace humans in many fields, I also feel that there is something profound that can't be replaced. And perhaps this nuance helps me look at the change without sinking into complete pessimism. Though I can rationally explain the reasons why machines gain ground, I also feel that human nature possesses qualities no algorithm can replicate authentically: spontaneous creativity, genuine empathy, intuition born from experience, the deep experience of emotion. Still, I acknowledge that technology and the economy do not function based on these abstract values, but on utility and efficiency. And in this cold competition, humans lose ground. That's why I try not to pretend to be overly optimistic. In many fields, robots really will replace people. It will happen not because they are morally or intellectually better, but because they are more useful in an economic system that rewards productivity. Looking ahead, I realize the real question is not whether robots will replace humans, but what kind of society we will build as this happens. I often think about what the future of work will look like. Will there be jobs complex and human enough to justify our presence? Will we end up working alongside robots, not in place of them? Or will we reinvent the very idea of work? I would like a future where technology becomes an extension of human ability, not a full replacement. But the realist in me knows that such coexistence is not guaranteed. It depends on political, economic, and ethical decisions, and these do not always favor the individual. With all these reflections, I remain lucid. Yes, robots will replace humans in many fields. And yes, the reasons are clear: efficiency, cost, predictability, technological adaptability. But it is just as clear that humans, with all their fragility and imperfection, still possess something that cannot be perfectly copied. Perhaps that will save us in some way, or perhaps the future will force us to redefine what being useful means in a world where raw utility is dominated by machines. In the end, I look forward with a mix of fear, curiosity, and hope. Fear comes from loss, the loss of jobs, of our traditional roles. Curiosity comes from the unknown, because I live in a time when the future has never been so unpredictable. And hope comes from the fact that humans have always managed to adapt, reinvent themselves, and find meaning where it seemed there was none.